and welcome back to Chronic Pain Journey with Susie Wolf. I'm Susie Wolf. If you remember last time, we left off with me getting a letter from my doctor telling me he would no longer be prescribing narcotics, and I told you this was going to be part 2 about the pain pump. Well, there have been some developments, and the pain pump story became way too long to tell in one video. So, unfortunately, this is going to be part 2 of 3. So, like I said, we left off with the doctor's letter. It came with a notice of 3 months. That was plenty of time to find another doctor, and I told you I love that doctor. You're never going to hear me say a negative thing about him. And it also recommended 3 doctors. One doctor was someone I had worked with before, and that was definitely not an option. He had fixed my problem, and when I still had pain after he fixed it, that just pissed him off, and he dropped me cold turkey. And the second choice was no longer taking patients. Evidently they had enough referrals that they were full. And the third choice was what I was going to have to go with, and because I didn't know anyone else. And luckily they also had an office in Omaha, which is much, much closer to my home. So I went to my first meeting. Now, I did not meet the doctor. I met his registered nurse practitioner. And her name is Missy, and I did get her permission to say her name. Her name is Missy, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, she scared the crap out of me at first. I thought this is going to be like a general and a private. And she talked to me that I had to detox in the hospital. They would put me in the hospital for a week, try and make me as comfortable as possible, while I dropped all of my medication at once and detoxed. Now, I had detoxed because of another doctor years before and was absolutely petrified to do this. And then I finally wrapped my brain around it and decided that it was something that, well, at least it would be over quick. It might be hell, but it'll be over quick. So I go to meet with the doctor first time, and Missy is there too, and their hospital is not set up for detox. So I'm going to have to taper off. So we start that process. Now, I was on 3 medications. One super duper strong time released medication that I took 6 times a day. One very strong as needed medication that I took for flare-ups, and one not so strong medication that I could take up to 4 times a day. And honestly, it was more for things like headaches that the other medication would give me, or backaches, or it was just a different medication. So the first thing Missy did was keep my strong prescriptions the same and just knock out the little prescription. And I was supposed to come back in a week. Well, I didn't notice any difference in that because, like I said, it wasn't a very strong medication. And so the next step was we took a couple weeks going from my 8 times a day. We lowered the dose and took it to 4 times a day. And instead of being as needed, it was on a schedule. And that took a few weeks, but that was no big deal either. And then it was time to hit the Big Daddy. Now, by this time, I had a fairly comfortable relationship with Missy. I wasn't scared of her anymore. And I used to bring into her office what I called my Missy lists. And of questions I had come up with during the week. So we would go over my Missy list, and then we would go over whatever she wanted to talk about, and then we'd set my prescriptions for a week. And so, of course, the first prescription was to knock me down to 5 times a day on my super duper strong medication, the time-released kind. And to be honest, I didn't really notice that big of a difference that week either. So it was like, this is going to be a breeze. And then the next week, we knocked me down to 4. That was not a breeze. I felt nothing the first 2 days, so I thought it was going to be the same. But again, it's a time-released medication. So on day 3, I would have a pretty uncomfortable day. But then day 4 would be okay. I met with her on Monday. So then Thursday would be okay. Friday would be better. Saturday and Sunday would be normal. I'd go back to see Missy on Monday, and we'd do it all over again. Now, the hardest part of this process was that every time they lowered my medication, they raised my pain. And it was about this time that the car rides to her office, which most of the time was in Omaha, but sometimes I had to see her in Fremont. But the car rides to her office, I would be bawling by the time we got there. So I would have on my sunglasses and keep them on in the waiting room. And I had given up on getting ready and getting dressed to go to her office. I live in pajamas, and I just went to the doctor's office in pajamas. I didn't care. I was in so much pain. The thought of putting on jeans, just, there was no way. So, the reason that I could do this was I kind of had this hope about the pain pump that they had explained to me, and I didn't know very much about it. I knew I was going to have a test ahead of time, and where they were going to be just giving me a shot in my spine, which I was also not thrilled about. But I didn't really know if it was going to work. I didn't understand how they could give me the same or even more medication, and yet I wouldn't feel it anywhere else in my body. I wouldn't have any side effects. I wouldn't have any of the bad stuff that goes with taking narcotics, like, completely messing up your teeth, or constipation, or just any of the things that go with narcotics. And then I was walking out of the office one day, and there was this little old lady in a wheelchair, and she had the nice big electronic wheelchair. You could tell she'd been in it for a while. And I said something to her, nice day, whatever, and she said, "Oh, yes it is. I had my shot last week." And so I turned around and I said, "Your shot?" She goes, "Yeah, the test for the pain pump." And I'm like, "Oh, really? How'd it go?" And she said she had been in pain from one thing or another. She had started having really bad arthritis at age 36. And she had basically been in pain from head to toe since she was 36 years old. And this woman was well into her 70s. And she said they gave her that shot, and she went 3 days completely pain-free. And that's when I really developed hope and really saw a light at the end of the tunnel and got really motivated to do this. Even though I'd had that really hard day on the week before, and they had just dropped me again, now down to 3 a day. And I was just kind of, it was like the skies opened up, and I heard angels saying, "This is actually gonna work." So, then I was down to 3 times a day that week, went back the next week, and Missy told me that instead of going down to twice a day, which is what I was prepared for, she was going to take me back to 6 a day and cut the dose in half. And I was fine with that because it meant no drop for me. That week was going to be a breeze because there was going to be no drop. Unfortunately, that was the hardest week of the entire thing. For some reason, that made a way bigger difference than actually dropping the dose, and it was a really hard thing. But Missy ended up being an incredible partner. Once she figured out how hard it was for me to make the trip out there, she started writing us 2 weeks worth of prescriptions at a time and trusting me to make the drop. And then when she could, and when I was at a low enough place, she started letting me stay at 1 dose for 2 weeks at a time, and only drop every 2 weeks. And then she would write me a month's worth of prescriptions at a time so that I didn't have to come out. And then one day, and our goal was to get down to 0 of the super duper strong medication, because that's what you had to do in order to get the pump. Well, I was down to 3 of the half dose. Missy thought I was at 4, but sometimes I would drop on my own a little early just to make things go a little easier. So I was on 3 a day of my super duper strong. And I came into Missy's office and sat down and waited. And when she came in, she had the biggest smile on her face, and she was in the best mood, and she was almost giddy. But I didn't pick up on it right away. Mom did, but I didn't. And I mean, she was almost vibrating. And I said, I have my Missy list. And she's like, okay, you do yours first. Go, go, go. So we went through my Missy list, and my last one, is basically, telling her that I had, that I could go back to dropping more often, or I don't remember exactly. She goes, well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. She goes, the pump lady was in here today, and I told her I had you down to, and she gave her the amount of medication I was on, and the pump lady said, you're good to go. You don't have to go down any further. And I was elated and suddenly realized just how excited Missy was and why. Because we didn't have to cut down anymore. And they scheduled my surgery for 6 weeks later. For 6 weeks later. There's a lot of people waiting for this surgery. So they scheduled my surgery for 6 weeks later, but during that time, I would be allowed to at least stay on the level of medication I was on. She said I could keep taking 4 a day, and that's when I told her, well, I'm actually taking 3 a day. And she goes, even better. So we were all very excited, and the surgery was scheduled, and that's where I'm going to leave you today, because I really want, like I said last time, I really want to give you good details with the pump. And like I said earlier, some things have developed and changed. So I really want that to be a video that really explains to those of you who are curious what the pump is and how it works and that kind of thing. So for today, I will sign off. Thank you for joining me on Chronic Pain Journey with Susie Wolf. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and I'm still trying to get to that 100 subscribers, so please hit that red button down there and the bell next to it, and you won't miss the video about the pump. So thank you everybody, and I will see you next Tuesday.